Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to people and our friends in Europe. Good evening to other friends in other countries. It's a rainy Tuesday afternoon here in Singapore. There's a thunderstorm, but I hope the internet will not be affected. So anyway, this is our third series of our weekly webinar for Ebro. And this time we will be talking about the cold chain storage and distribution solutions that Ebro has for you. But this will be specific for the medical and healthcare processes and the products. The first two webinars were quite interesting for most of the participants. Thank you very much for attending those webinars. This will probably be not as interesting, but I'll try to make it one. So this webinar's topic will focus on the cold chain and the warehouse and the distribution channels, um, specifically from the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. We will be sharing solutions for monitoring, recording, and continuous surveillance solutions. Okay. Again, I'd like to remind you or inform you again as an introduction about the three categories where Ebro is very strong at. We are strong in the food. We have solutions for the food and beverage industries. We also have very good solutions for the market segment in the medical and the pharmaceutical, and not to forget about the industrial market segment. But today we will be focusing on the logistics, storage, and transport in the medical and the pharmaceutical industry. And we'll also be talking about clean rooms and how to monitor it, and thermal mapping, which is very much high in demand, not only this time in the medical and pharmaceutical, but also in the industrial and the food industry. Well, I'm getting used to always wishing you, everybody. I hope everyone is in good health. And let me share with you another quote from Nelson Mandela, which says, "I am confident that nobody will accuse me of selfishness if I ask to spend time while I am still in good health with my family, with my friends, and also especially to spend time with myself." So I hope everyone is well today, and please try to keep yourselves healthy. I also want to share with you again about Xylem for those who have just attended this series of webinars. Who and what is Xylem? Okay, so we are one of the world's leading water technology companies with a revenue, just an example, from 2017, about 5.25 billion US dollars, with roughly more than 16,500 employees um, all across the globe, and that's in 150 countries in 7 continents. So we bring together the most progressive brands, from transport to treatment to dewatering to applied water solutions, and the measurement and control solutions, where analytics, where I belong, is under. So you can see here, under the analytics group, you can see Ebro, WTW, YSI, and the rest of leading product brands. And of course, not to mention the expertise of the people surrounding these products with strong focus on developing comprehensive and sustainable solutions for you. Okay, now we go to our main topic, which is the cold chain monitoring, and people also call it the cool chain. But let me use the term cold chain market segment. This is also a regulated process with references in healthcare and medical, pharmaceutical, and also some good references from the food. Okay, one of the main um, thrust of these references is the action of providing, in accordance with the principles of GMP, that any procedure, processes, equipment, activity, or system actually leads to the expected results. So we have specific Ebro instruments that are made suitable for this um, GMP directive in research, production, storage, and transport. Um, Here, they lay down the procedures from guidelines and protocols in the pharmaceuticals and medical, and not only in the distribution and storage, but those that are also partly um, involving shelf life studies in the incubators, environmental chambers, refrigerators, freezers, stability rooms, storage facilities, and a lot more. So the requirements for temperature and humidity measurements are actually very important in these industries because in the standards and the reference that we have talked about a while ago, we must document and capture the possible negative impacts on the products or the goods. So destinations and recipients includes the hospitals, the pharmacies or drugstores, the resident doctors, and in the pharmaceutical, especially the warehouses. So when we are talking about transportation, this is covering all the batches of temperature sensitive products that has to be closely monitored during shipment or transport because different scenarios vary in a very high degree, so they must be monitored. So measuring requirements should be in the ambient temperature. Ambient could be the truck itself, the container itself, and then the product temperature and the temperature inside the parcel or the packaging. So for storage facilities and storage rooms, temperature and RH measurements are very necessary. And why? Because these has these have great and adverse effects to the following materials, which includes raw materials, intermediate products, most especially the final products, and the retained samples, which will be under study of the laboratory for each batches coming from the production. So storage conditions must correctly determine and exclude negative impacts on the products. Therefore, they need to be monitored. Um, so this is highlighted in the good storage practice, also in the good distribution practice, and summed up in general in the good manufacturing practice. So a lot of companies needs to get certifications for GMP, and measuring all these important parameters is very important. So this webinar, unlike with the first two sessions that we had the past 2 weeks, um, we would like to share with you our solutions So there's some sales pitch in these presentations, but we find this important because most of our dealers and customers, their their most frequent questions is which data logger should be used for this and that. So therefore, I'd like to share with you this three most common and most popular data loggers from Ebro: the EBI 20, the EBI 300 series, including the 330 and the 310, and the product that I like very much, the EBI 25. So these three loggers can be used in the same applications, but you have to consider the measuring range, where it is going to be used. Um, is it possible that we just dispose of the data logger after a transportation monitoring procedure, and many other things? Second, and the most important, is the sampling rate, sampling frequency, or the accuracy. So then we have, well, we will show to you in the succeeding slides about the 310. But please be reminded that these three um, data loggers from Ebro can be offered to maybe the same applications, but please try to look deeper into what the customer needs. So we have different kinds of EBI 20 logger series. We have just a logger for just only the temperature, and also combined temperature and humidity, and a device that can cover a very wide range of temperature range or relative humidity range. So EBI 20 is very easy to use. You can use it as standalone, um, but you can also use a software, a WinLog Basic or a WinLog Pro. WinLog Pro, I like it, and it's going to give you a lot of benefits and reporting flexibilities. So you can configure and set up your measuring configuration for the EBI 20s using the software and produce the reports automatically. So it is as simple as that. So that's the one of the reason why it is very popular to use in thermal mapping um, requirements, especially for healthcare and pharmaceutical warehouses. So we sell a lot of this in the tropical countries, which include Thailand, Malaysia. Philippines is using a lot of these EBI 20s, thanks to our dealers in the Philippines. And they're also using this to offer their own services, performing thermal mapping in these enormous warehouses in the healthcare market segment. So you can see here a photo. This is an actual photo of one of our business partners in the Philippines doing thermal mapping or conducting thermal mapping. Then I mentioned to you about the different EBI 300 logger series. Um, we have the single-use disposable data loggers, which is highly recommended for transport monitoring. We also have the 300 and the 310. Applications of which include some measurement of storage for food, beverages, drugs, serums, blood bottles, dry ice, and other raw materials. And of course, it's including both transportation and storage. Other than transport and storage, the EBI 300 series can also be used for thermal mapping procedures, especially when um, a large quantity of loggers is not required. So therefore, they are also used in the supermarkets. So this is very easy to use because it's a USB type of logger, and you can just download it by just inserting the US, plugging the logger into the USB um, of your computer, and you can use free software for this, and also the WinLog Pro. Um, then the third one, which is the most flexible amongst the three, the EBI 25, I call it a complete surveillance system. The EBI 25 is a continuous monitoring and recording system from Ebro. It measures typically temperature and relative humidity, and they can be used for a wide range of applications, not only in the medical or pharmaceutical, but also in the food and industrial market segments. So there are different logger versions available, and it only needs an interface and a web-based software called the WinLog Web. And then from using that, it will create automatically or generate reports. So EBI 25, we cannot use this for transport. So therefore, the application is focused more on um, facility monitoring and control. So it has wireless data points for temperature and humidity, and it has different variable data source that can be established um, by TCP/IP or Internet Protocol or by USB. And other sensors can be integrated via Modbus. So that includes some important parameters such as particle counting in clean rooms and other applications not mentioned here with. So data display and storage. Data display can be seen in the interface itself. You can scroll through the display in the IF400, but you can also see this in the software or in your computer, either using the WinLog Web software or the WinLog Web single PC-based software. So we have different kinds of sensors that can be connected or configured with the EBI 25. We have temperature, we have combination, EBI 25 temperature and relative humidity. And we also have uh, an EBI 25 where uh, large variations of different sensors can be connected. Uh, like for example, you can see the measurement range in the EBI 25 TX. It can measure from minus 200 degrees Celsius to plus 200 degrees Celsius, which makes it very flexible for a variety of use in multi applications that you can see in different market segments. And not to forget about a good accuracy for the system. So these four loggers can communicate in the interface, and the interface can be connected to an alarm box to give you um, some audible um, alarm signals um, whenever there's um, some limits that were measured, either over a measuring limit or under a measuring limit. Now we go to the WinLog Web. Again, this is for the EBI 25. It is a web-based software for the EBI 25 loggers. And this is a software that can be installed in a PC, and also transmit or send alarm notifications via email, produce alarms in either by visual or by audible um, alarms, uh, or just by connecting to the IF400 interface. It is compliant to the FDA 21 CFR Part 11. You can activate or disable this functionality. It depends on your requirements. It has very large um, database, and management of large data sets, of course, is acceptable, possible. And most importantly, in the healthcare and pharmaceutical market segment, um, an IQ/OQ documentation is made available for this. Not for free though, but doing this, giving you this IQ and OQ documentation allows you to perform all your qualification procedures much more faster and much more easier. Applications for the EBI 25 include storage monitoring and recording for food products, for pharmaceutical products, and for medical products. So storage can be either with ambient temperatures or in freezers, or also maybe in high temperatures such as in fermenters. One very good example for an application where you can benefit from the EBI 25 a lot is using it in the healthcare warehouses. This photo is a very good example of an EBI 25 system used to monitor the parameters and the conditions of the warehouse. So it can be used for warehouses. We have one partner that is actually using the EBI 25 for thermal mapping, and that is of course possible. Um, and we will talk about thermal mapping more in details in the succeeding slides. So we go now to the main applications for all these cold chain loggers. And the most important application amongst all is the thermal mapping of the pharmaceutical warehouses. This is to comply with the regulations, especially for now that we have this ASEAN harmonization getting updated almost very regularly, and now being worked with the ICH and the ISP and other pharmaceutical world organizations. So this activity is performed everywhere in Asia, and I'm sure this is also performed in other parts in the world. So the purpose for this is to check the performance of your warehouse. Either it is a control warehouse or just an ambient warehouse. You have to check every zones to identify warm areas and cold areas um, in the whole warehouse area. So these are just some of the important objectives of why you need to perform thermal mapping. But the most important here is to determine the highest temperature and humidity fluctuations in your area or in your warehouse. Um, Also, a requirement is producing a mean kinetic temperature report, or most popularly called the MKT report. So this is made a lot easier and convenient for you with the WinLog softwares from Ebro. Um, For all those loggers that I have mentioned, using the data, when you perform data acquisitions from any of those three loggers that we mentioned a while ago, an MKT report can be calculated. Just a comparison, why is thermal mapping a requirement? It is almost similar to food. When you look at the pharmaceutical products, it determines the stability of your products and how they are in conditions that are made possible when storing to um, an ambient warehouse or a controlled warehouse. And this is regulated. In pharma, it is, and is according to some guidelines. We have the ASEAN harmonization available for pharmaceutical standards, and it is also compliance for good distribution practices or GMP. Excuse me. While in the food products, it's more of a variety because you're not only measuring warehouses, you also need to perform thermal mapping, for example, in chillers or cold storage areas. So these are the main directives that are mentioned in our guidelines um, uh, for performing thermal mapping. Um, this is very much specific to the products now. So when you perform thermal mapping, it is actually targeting or establishing whether the conditions have passed your criteria not only for the warehouse but also for the products. Either it's a raw material or a finished product. So all these guidelines are available, whether it's your reference could be from USP, GMP, GDP. All this has got different norms and standards, but actually they talk about almost the same guidelines altogether. We have the mostly widely used is from the WHO, and here you can see the link. This technical report series, you can base all your procedures from this one. It is very helpful. And this guide is made available for free. You can just visit this link and then you're good to go. But please also um, bear in mind that you are using devices or data loggers with accuracy and measuring ranges that are cited in these norms. We perform thermal mapping in the pharmaceutical industries, and the guidelines, we often use the one that is mentioned by the International Pharmaceutical Federation. But when your customer prefers to use, for example, the USP, that's the US Pharmacopoeia, it is also a good guideline to follow. So for pharmaceutical warehouses, when you perform thermal mapping, it's not as easy as you just place those data loggers in any point, and then you decide by yourself, okay, this is representative of the whole or entire warehouse, and I can go ahead. No, it's not as simple as that. You have to write and get approved a thermal mapping protocol. So this protocol should cover all the aspects of the engineering, the construction, and the flow designed for the warehouse to function. So that's including the RCL, which means the requirement classification, and the URS, which stands for User Requirement Specification of the warehouse. So it's not as easy as just, okay, I'm going to use 50 loggers for warehouse A and B, and then 100 loggers for warehouse C and D. Um, if you need assistance or any support, um, writing protocols for your warehouses, you can always contact us and we'll be very happy to help you. What must be reflected in the protocol? The most important issues are the following. It should determine the grids or the distance from one logger to the other or from one sensor to the other. The thermal mapping duration. Before, most of the companies require 72 hours continuous monitoring, but now the big multinational companies require 7 days. So the thermal mapping duration could vary from customer to customer. The protocol should also highlight the acceptance criteria, which is being dictated by the products that are stored in the warehouse. So these are the main um, aspects or essentials for a good thermal mapping protocol. Ebro, we don't write the guidelines. We follow the guidelines and we collaborate with all the um, very good and very informative organizations. And we involve much with the ISPE. We're members, most of our colleagues are members of the ISPE, and of course the USP, and then the World Health Organization Technical Report Series. So if you have time, and I think you have time, especially during this period of home quarantine, um, reading this technical report series, um, a supplement provided by the World Health Organization, it's very good, and you'll be able to appreciate why your customers or yourself needs to perform temperature mapping. Ken, these are the different guidelines from different organizations. Although they are different, they collaborate and they discuss amongst themselves about these guidelines. We also have the ICH, which is writing guidelines in adaptation to existing laws, but they are more referring to all those guidelines from the US FDA. ICH is also a very helpful organization, and they have overloads of information for a variety of medical and pharmaceutical processes. Okay, so at the end, when you use the EBI 25, um, it gives you a total profile of the area that you are monitoring. You can integrate in the software your own illustration of your facility or your own diagram of your facility. And from that illustration or diagram, you'll be able to find all the loggers, where the locations of the loggers are. Aside from warehouses, you can use it for incubators, also for thermal mapping. I'm not only referring to EBI 25 this time, but also with the EBI 20 and the EBI 3XO series. Also for refrigerators, for thermal mapping, you can use the EBI 20 or the EBI 3X0. But for refrigerators, we have this amazing refrigerator thermometer called the TMX. TMX standing for temperature, measurement, and expertise. This is a thermometer for monitoring your refrigeration cycles, not used for thermal mapping, okay? This is a fixed monitor for your refrigerators. So this is an active temperature control for laboratories, but also for pharmacies or drugstores. Um, excuse me if, just as an example, if I am Glaxo or GSK and I have very heat sensitive products or temperature sensitive products, I want all the drugstores to store these in the correct storage conditions. So not only will GSK monitor this in their own facilities, but will also require the drugstores or the pharmacies to monitor these products when they store it. So it's not an excuse. It's not only dictated by the regulation, but also by the manufacturer of the products or the medicines itself. So it has an acoustic alarm when some limits has been exceeded, and there's an optical alarm also. And what is displayed in this thermometer is the current value, but also giving you an indication of the minimum and maximum all in one view. So also the sensor in glycol bottles is made available. Why do we use this on glycol bottles? Because refrigerators, when we open it, the temperature change is drastic, and we don't want this monitored by the sensor. And that's the use of the glycol bottles to avoid short temperature changes. Why do we need one? It's because we need all the information in one view. We don't have to toggle from one function to the other. So everything must be there, the minimum, the maximum, and the current values. And it should give you an active alarm control. So who is using this, and who should use this refrigerator thermometer? I mentioned already about the drugstores, but the biological laboratories certainly needs this kind of a product. And its design is compliant to these standards, the ISO 15189 for medical laboratories, and also for EN 13485 for measuring the air and product temperature for transport, storage, and distribution of pharmaceutical and medical products. So this is a little bit into sales. Why we need to convince people, our customers, to acquire a TMX thermometer. It is because it's a complete system that serves the purpose and only the purpose of giving you a total indication of your refrigeration um, conditions, and that's the current value and the minimum and maximum value. And of course, the alarms, which is an acoustic alarm that just starts setting on when a limit value is exceeded, and also an optional optical alarm. Um, it depends on which you prefer with this TMX thermometer. But what is good with this is we deliver this device, even though it's a very affordable one. It goes with a 3-point calibration certificate. And I think for most of your customers, our customers, they need this calibration certificate all the time. So there are certainly a lot more important applications to discuss for pharmaceutical and medical segment in the industry. Um, Now we have time to focus on the different cold chain loggers available from Ebro. Um, We also have handhelds for counter checking some of the processes and products that you need to measure. um, we have all the solutions, but mainly from presenting to you these cold chain loggers, it gives you flexibility with your choice of the right product for the right application. And also, please remember that Ebro and us from Xylem will always have the solutions for you, and we will always be there to help you with this kind of solutions for your objectives and for your applications. So I'm sorry, my voice is fading. Could be with the weather. But I hope you enjoyed our topics for this webinar. So now we go to the question and answer forum. And we have time for that. So, Michael, can you help me with this one now? Kindly join me.
Hello, Alan. Thank you for that cool presentation.
Thanks.
And I thought you might enjoy that pun. Sorry, that's not very entertaining. But to everyone who's joined, as Alan said, we'd like to now open the Q&A session. So we invite you to type in your questions into the chat box on your screen. We'll try to answer as many as possible with the time remaining. Again, if there are any questions that we can't fit in by the hour, Alan will certainly follow up on these offline. We do have an email address that's connected with each question, so he will get to you in the next few days. So feel free to load up the chat box with all of your questions, and we'll begin answering some of those right now online. So Alan, first question, regarding the regulations of wave frequencies in each country. It seems that the regulations are different for each country. Is it possible for EBI 25 to be used in Indonesia?
They were used before, many years ago in Indonesia, but now we have to comply with not only with the silent policy, but the government policies um, by the respective countries. And we have actually acquired a license for the EBI 25 frequency last year for Taiwan, and we have acquired one. The frequency is registered now in Thailand. Thanks to a very efficient business partner in Thailand, they were very fast. The registration took them only 2 months to get the license for the frequency. In Indonesia, we were trying to accommodate the EBI 25, but right now we have to comply. I have talked to some of our closest business partner in Indonesia if they can facilitate this frequency registration in their country, and I think they will do it. So yes, Michael, it varies from which country it will be used. For Japan, for example, maybe you have a different available frequency for Japan. In Indonesia, maybe they cannot use 922.4 megahertz available for Singapore. So they need to register this. If you are interested with the EBI 25, um, we will be very happy to work with you 100% in providing you all the necessary requirements so you can get a license for this frequency.
Great, Alan. Okay, next question. Does the customer need to know how to write a thermal mapping protocol? And yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, the customer, if they are from a pharmaceutical company or healthcare company and they don't have a validation team, um, they don't have any excuse not to write a thermal mapping protocol. It is an important document that should be in place before they can perform any data acquisition procedures. So thermal mapping protocol is uh, the first step, and there's no shortcut. Asylum Analytics, we can help them write a thermal mapping protocol for them, for the customers.
Great. Thanks, Alan. That was actually the second part of the question. Can Ebro support these customers with the writing of the thermal mapping protocol? So thanks for answering that. That is possible.
Can I add?
Please do. Yes.
Yeah, we have our business partner in Singapore, and we are willing to write the thermal mapping protocol for them free of charge. But if you're making a good business from this thermal mapping activities, um, we only support you in the beginning, but it should be, we should sustain the business where it would be beneficial for all parties. But no reservations. We will help you all out with helping with writing thermal mapping protocols.
Great. Is there a possibility to get a network-based WinLog application?
WinLog, can you repeat the question, Michael, please?
Sure. Is there a possibility to get a network-based WinLog application?
Um, Ebro, one thing am very proud of is Ebro is always open to um, improving and developing new products and even their softwares. I have heard this something is going on with product development, but I'm not in the position to um, share it with you yet. But yes, we have all these possibilities for the WinLog softwares.
Great. Do we have any GPS-based data loggers?
Um, none that I know of at the moment. Um, no, the answer is not yet.
Okay, great. There is a question here concerning calibration of an EBI 40. Apparently, one of our customers have had issues with getting Ebro to calibrate it to their specifications. What would you recommend that this customer do?
EBI 40 is using thermocouple wires. So it is when we calibrate a system, we calibrate the data logger, which is the EBI 40, and also the thermocouples, which is the sensor that is used for data acquisition. That's the only procedure in order for us to get a total accuracy for the whole system. So I am not sure what the issues are, but when we calibrate an EBI 40, we should calibrate it with the thermocouples that are used and connected with the EBI 40. So EBI 40 and the thermocouples connected to it.
Great, thanks, Alan. We don't have any other questions in the waiting box. So if anybody else has any questions, feel free to enter them now in the chat box and we'll share those with Alan. We've got a few minutes left in the webinar. Alan, is there anything else you'd like
Yeah,
to share?
the EBI 40, the one who asked us that question, please email me in the email address that you see in the slide. The and I'll be very happy to collaborate with you on how to calibrate the EBI 40s. Okay. If there are no questions, I'm sorry if the cold chain loggers are not very interesting, but next week's webinar is going to be a summary of all that we have discussed about the past three webinars that we had. and it's going to talk on all the industries with specific examples, and how the validation varies from food, pharmaceutical, and medical. So next week is going to be an interesting topic. So I hope to see all of you again next week.
Great, Alan. Well, we don't have any other questions. And again, to everybody out there, whoever asked a question in chat, again, your question is connected with your email address. So Alan will be able to conveniently follow up with you on these questions. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week, same time, same day. And looking forward, Alan, to your next webinar session next Tuesday. Thanks. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye, all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.